Well, hi, astronomy enthusiast. This is Tom Sprecher, and I thought I'd make a little video showing you just all the steps I have to go through to take an astrophoto here at my Shed Observatory. So we're going to open it up, and you can see what it looks like from the outside. Then we'll go inside, and I'll kind of explain my equipment to you, and then we'll start setting it up to do an imaging run. So there you see what it looks like with the roof open. There's a look at the observatory from up on my deck. And I have some black material draped across that one corner just to help cut down any lights coming from the house. I don't have the ability to take astrophotos very close to the horizon. So let's go inside and take a look at the equipment. Okay, we're inside the observatory. There's a laptop that controls everything. We have a pier. And this is a look at the equipment I have. Currently, I have a 90mm APO refractor for imaging and a 80mm short tube for guiding. The mount is an Atlas EQG on a pier. As I said before, I don't have a very large viewing angle, so there are the trees to the east. That's looking due north. We have the roofline of the house to deal with, trees to the west, and directly behind the shed I have a tree line that's due south. Okay, so once we have the observatory roof open, the startup procedure is to turn on all the equipment through one switch here that powers up everything. Then I boot the laptop. Take off the dust covers, and we're ready to go. In case you're wondering what that white screen is for, what I'll do is I have a pre-positioned parking on the scope that will take it and turn it around and point it directly at that screen. Then I'll turn some special lights on, and that's where I shoot my flat frames. So let's begin our imaging session. So the first thing I have to do is take off the dust covers. And then I have a button-off mask, which I'll place on the imaging scope. And now we're ready to go. So let's power things up, start all the software, and we'll take it from there. We're now going to connect to the observatory computer, and we are going to start a program called Nina. This is a program that controls everything in the observatory. So the first thing I want to do is connect to the camera and turn it on and start the cooling process of the camera. We're going to try to cool it down to -10. It's currently sitting at about +15°C. So we'll turn it on, and the cooler will activate, and it will now start cooling the chip down. The other things that we can control with Nina is a focuser, which I do have. So we'll turn it on, followed by the mount, the telescope. We'll turn it on so now Nina can talk directly to the mount and issue slew commands. It's currently parked. And then finally, we'll turn the guider on. Nina uses PHD2, which is a common program for guiding. So it's turned the guider on, program's on, it's coming up, setting some parameters, and we'll stop it and minimize it. As you can see, the chip is starting to cool down. Now we'll start a program called Carts to Seal. This is a planetarium program. It also wants to talk to the mount. So we'll go up here to the telescope, connect, issue a connect command, and now the planetarium program can talk to the mount. You can see that round circle, that's where the telescope is currently pointing, which is due north. And I'm going to tell it to slew to a star and the Big Dipper handle. The reason I'm doing that is I want to look at a bright star through the Botnov mask to verify my focus. So it's currently slewing, and when it gets to there, what I'll do is switch back to the program called Nina. And now in Nina, what I want to do is set an exposure for 2 seconds on the imaging camera, and we're going to loop it, and then we'll start the exposures. In the center, you'll see an exposure, and that is exposure of a bright star through a Botnov mask. Lying directly in the center, which it isn't. So I'm going to move the focuser a slight amount, and now you see it's in the center. So now we have perfect focus. So back to Nina, we can see that the chip has cooled down to about -10. And now let's go into our Sky Atlas, which is built into Nina. And I decided tonight I'm going to image M51. So the Sky Atlas brings up a picture of M51. The little chart right there shows it's going to transit around midnight, which will cause a meridian flip. And now let's look at the framing assistant. And what it will do, it will show a picture of basically the sensor, the size of the sensor in the camera, and where M51 would fit as far as size. So you can see it's definitely sized okay. It's not going to exceed the limits of the sensor. So we're okay there. So now we're going to go to our sequence target, and that imports the target name, M51, imports the RA and declination, and it brings up that chart again. So let's set the sequence up. Well, first thing we want to do is actually slew to the target. We do want to enable guiding once we're at the target, and we want to do a plate solve, which will make sure that our target is in the center of our sensor. And finally, let's actually set up what we want to do. As far as imaging tonight, we want to take 30 total exposures. Each exposure is going to be 300 seconds, which is 5 minutes. We are going to be taking lights. We're not going to be taking calibration frames. And we don't have a filter wheel to deal with. And binning will be standard 1 by 1. We're going to turn dithering on, and we're going to do it every other frame. Finally, let's go to our tab, our imaging tab, and there's a few things there to set up. One being the type of file that we're going to download, which are FITs, and where it's going to put it on our C drive. Have a folder called Astrodata, and that's where I'm putting all my lights. Then we have to set a couple things up in the meridian flip. So I said around midnight, the mount will have to do a flip, And so I've enabled it. I've set it up to do the flip 5 minutes after the meridian, and it basically will do a calculation to make sure that it is not imaging during a flip. And then finally, down in our sequence, what we want to do is make sure that when our sequence is finished, after it's finished doing all 30 frames, that it parks the scope and warms up the camera. So during the nighttime, then whenever that's finished, 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, it'll do that and it'll be put to sleep. So when I get up in the morning, all I need to do is upload all my data. And we're just checking our plate solving settings to make sure that they're all okay and everything looks like it should there. We're currently using a program called ASTAP for plate solving. It works quite well, seems to solve all the time. So let's go back and just check the camera, make sure its chip is cooled down, which it has. Now let's go back to our sequence and actually go down here and click on that. So our sequence is started. We're now taking our first image. What it has to do first is slew to the target. Then it does a plate solve. That's the plate solve picture. And if you look down at RA error and deck error, it's very close, so it's not going to have to plate solve again. So now the sequence started. It's up to 6 seconds on the first image. So that's going to take 5 minutes. So meanwhile, let's just go back here to our planetarium program to show you that M51 will indeed go past the meridian about 6 minutes of midnight. Back to our sequence. It has finished the first image. It's now on the second image, and we can go to our imaging tab and actually look at our first image. That's M51. Doesn't look that great because it's only one image, and those vertical shadows you saw, that's because it actually started taking the first image through a tree. Now I'm into a program called AstroPixel Processor. That's where I take all of my lights and my calibration frames. I load those into this program and go through, set up some various parameters, and once those are set, I'll tell it to go and start what's called integrating. So it goes through all kinds of steps to calibrate the frames, integrate them, stack them, and finally it will come up with one final master image. So we'll kick that off, and this could take anywhere as 5 or 10 minutes, just depending upon the size of the frames and how many I have. So we'll fast forward through that process. Now it's just about finished. So when it's finished, I'll load up the master frame that it integrated, our master frame M51, but it's not going to show very much. It's basically going to show a black background with some stars, and in the center you can faintly see M51. That's the image right there. So what we'll do, this program has some post-processing built into it, so we'll check on digital processing, saturation, neutralization. It will do that, and there's our image of M51. Now you can see it still needs some more post-processing, so we'll take that image, import it into Photoshop, and in Photoshop I will do things like remove gradients, set the white point, set the black point, neutralize the background, sharpen it up, do some deconvolution, remove the noise from the background. So all those kind of things are things that are done in Photoshop. So once we're done with all those, the image, before I did some more processing on it, mainly background noise removal, and that's my final image of M51. So let's bring that up full frame. And the next couple of pictures were things that I've taken the last few months. So I hope you enjoyed this little journey through my process. I hope everyone is well, stays healthy, and hope to see you at the next meeting.